Taking a look at the day's headlines. North Korea fires 2 projectiles into the East Sea. They both flew more than 400 kilometers. We have our reporter ready at the Defense Ministry with the details. A clash of 2 Asian economies in Geneva over Japan's trade curbs on South Korea. But did Seoul's attempt to whip up international support at the WTO win the big players over? We'll find out. Plus 1.1%. That's how much the South Korean economy grew by in the second quarter compared to the previous 3 months. It is the highest on-quarter growth in almost 2 years. So, a matter of a few weeks after it was all handshakes, hugs and smiles at the DMZ between the leaders of North Korea and the United States, we have news for you this morning that the North has lobbed more projectiles into the East Sea, 2 to be exact. Let's get straight to our Defense Ministry correspondent Kim Ji-yeon, who joins us on the line. So, Ji-yeon, tell us more about what seems to be another provocation of sorts by the regime.
Sure, Mark. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff confirmed earlier this morning that North Korea had fired 1 short-range missile and 1 unidentified projectile from North Korea's eastern city of Wonsan at 5:34 and 5:57 a.m. Korea time this Thursday. The Joint Chiefs of Staff say the first one is a short-range missile that flew 430 kilometers towards the EC after being launched from a transporter erector launcher. Both of the weapons flew at an altitude of some 50 kilometers, and both of them flew in an easterly direction from the Dokdo Peninsula. It says it's currently working with the U.S. to verify the second unidentified projectile, including its flight distance. The last time North Korea test-fired a missile was back in early May when it tested a new tactical guided weapon. Despite repeated questions from the media on whether they could be officially verified as ballistic, this was not confirmed, and it's highly unlikely that the South Korean military will announce that they're ballistic. The military says it's been closely watching the Wonsan area where North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has recently made public appearances. And this is where North Korea had launched a Musudan ballistic missile in June 2016 to show the regime has made significant progress in its missile development as the missile flew 400 kilometers. The launch comes as Washington has sought to restart working-level negotiations on dismantling the North Korean nuclear weapons program in line with an agreement reached between U.S. President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un at their impromptu meeting at the inter-Korean border on June 30th. The last time North Korea fired projectiles was on May 9th when it launched 2 short-range missiles into the EC in an apparent show of frustration over stalled talks with the U.S. Last week, the North warned that the resumption of working-level talks would be affected by whether Seoul and Washington would go ahead with joint military exercises planned for next month. The Blue House says it's been briefed and that the incident will be discussed later today at South Korea's National Security Council. That's all I have for now. Back to you.
Well, thank you very much to our Kim Ji-yeon there at South Korea's Defense Ministry. And we're going to stay there right now because that ministry here in Seoul has rejected what it says are distorted claims by Russia regarding one of its military planes' recent intrusion into South Korea's airspace. This comes after Moscow couldn't really get its story straight about the incident. It changed in the space of a day. Lee Min-sun reports.
Seoul's defense ministry said Wednesday Russia had claimed its military aircraft did not intrude into South Korea's airspace, but that it was actually South Korea's Air Force and its pilots that impeded the Russian plane's flight course with, quote, threatening and unprofessional gestures. This was relayed from the military attaché office of the Embassy of Republic of Korea in Russia. In response, the ministry said Russia has distorted the facts and has deviated from the view expressed Tuesday by a military officer summoned from Russia's embassy in Seoul. The ministry said it has clear evidence to prove that a pair of Tu-95 bombers did trespass into Korea's Air Defense Identification Zone, or KADIZ, and that a Russian A-50 aircraft intruded into the East Sea twice near Dokdo Island. It said South Korea's Air Force acted according to protocol by giving numerous audio warnings and intercepting the Russian plane to keep it from advancing further, and later on firing warning shots. The ministry said it plans to confirm this through working-level talks with Russia, which is planned to be held on Thursday. It added it cannot readily accept Russia's explanation that the quote intrusion was caused by a technical glitch, and that this problem is what likely caused the aircraft to intrude into areas it had not planned to go. A defense ministry officer said if the Russian plane had stayed on a normal course, it would have no reason to encroach on Korea's airspace because it would have had navigational systems such as GPS. The ministry said the Russian military officer that was summoned had said Russia would immediately launch a probe and take necessary steps so that such an incident does not happen again. Earlier in the day, senior Cheongwade Secretary for Public Communication Yoon Do-han cited the Russian military attaché, saying the Russian side had explained that Tuesday's flight was planned in advance jointly with China, and that if it went according to its original plan, the intrusion into Korean airspace and entering Cadiz would have not occurred. Seoul's defense ministry said it's considering to what extent and when it will share related information with Russia. Lee Min-sun, Arirang News.
Now, in other news, South Korea's economy is estimated to have grown over 1% in the second quarter of this year. And this is quite the dramatic turnaround from the previous quarter when GDP actually shrank and did so by the largest amount since the 2008 global financial crisis. For more, we have our Kim Da-mi on the line for us at the Bank of Korea, where this information is coming from. Da-mi, tell us more.
Hi, Mark. South Korea's GDP grew by an estimated 1.1% in the April to June period. According to Bank of Korea, the figure marks the highest on-quarter growth since the third quarter of 2017, when the economy grew 1.5%. The country's economy increased at an annualized rate of 2.1% in the second quarter, also marking the highest growth since the final quarter of 2018.
Okay, so it could have been worse, but the latest 1.1% figure you quoted from the Bank of Korea is still below the central bank's estimate, which was 1.2%. That was the goal, right?
Right, and it's not all good news because the previous quarter's figure was so low, and also because the growth was partially caused by the government's increased consumption on healthcare benefits. The government consumption increased by 2.5%, which is a huge jump from the previous 0.4% increase in the previous quarter. Exports in the second quarter increased 2.3% from 3 months earlier, thanks to increased exports in motor vehicles and semiconductors. Imports also went up by 3% owing to increased imports of machinery. Facilities investment grew by 2.4%, led by the growth of investment in transportation equipment, but all these numbers are not as good as they seem. Exports only rose by 1.5% compared to the same period last year, and facility investment, in fact, dropped by almost 8% compared to the same period last year. Real gross domestic income, GDI, decreased by 0.6% compared to the previous quarter because of the worsened trade terms. With exports on a steady decline since last December, analysts note that it will be a challenge to reach the central bank's economic growth forecast of 2.2%. And under Japan's export restrictions, the country's economy in the second half of the year may get worse. The Bank of Korea said it's too early to comment on the country's economic growth, but it will carefully monitor the U.S.-China trade war as well as Japan's latest export curves. That's all from me, Mark.
Well, thank you very much, Da-mi, for that comprehensive report. Not much time to put all that information together, so we appreciate it. Now, South Korea has lashed out against Japan over its trade curbs on Seoul. It accused Tokyo of diplomatic retaliation during a highly charged WTO General Council meeting on Wednesday in Geneva. However, Japan criticized Seoul's complaints, claiming its export restrictions on Seoul are purely, it claims, for national security purposes. Kim Hyo-sun tells us more.
Amid rising trade tensions between South Korea and Japan, Seoul has called upon Tokyo to start the dialogue process. Addressing the General Council of the WTO on Wednesday, Kim Sung-ho, South Korea's deputy trade minister, slammed Japan's export curbs, calling them a, quote, diplomatic retaliation. Kim also laid out how Tokyo's restrictions will have a negative impact on other countries as well as individual consumers. Instead of elaborating based on specific legal evidence, his remarks appear to be aimed at pressuring Tokyo to come to the table for talks. His strategy seemed to take into account the possibility of Seoul suing Tokyo at the WTO dispute settlement body, as providing too much information could give Japan the upper hand in such a situation. After the meeting, Kim told reporters he offered to hold high-level bilateral talks, but Tokyo rejected the offer.
Japanese ambassador evaded to give us concrete answer. So I ask again to respond my proposed offer, but he flatly turned down without giving me any plausible reasons.
During the closed-door meeting, Japan rejected Seoul's complaints, claiming Tokyo's moves were necessary for national security purposes.
But I just emphasized that the measure taken by Japan is not a trade embargo. It's not a countermeasure against any trade-related issue. It is about the measure taken on the basis of export control.
Despite the fiery clashes, other WTO member states, including the U.S., refrained from publicly expressing their opinions on the matter. Kim Wonsan, Arirang News.
Now, as a follow-up to that report, South Korea's trade ministry has once again urged Japan to revoke its export curbs and to refrain from imposing further restrictions on Seoul. Wednesday was the last day Tokyo would accept feedback on the option of taking South Korea off its so-called whitelist of preferential trading partners. Yoon Jung-min with this report.
South Korea's trade ministry submitted an opinion to Japan on Wednesday, again urging Tokyo to take back its export curbs and not to exclude South Korea from the 27 countries on its so-called whitelist who received preferential treatment on trade.
Japan should immediately retract its groundless export restrictions on the 3 items related to semiconductors. Also, Japan should withdraw its move to revise the trade law to take South Korea off its whitelist. Companies and people in both countries do not want to break South Korea and Japan's win-win economic ties, which have lasted more than 60 years, because of this issue.
Removal would mean Japanese exporters have to apply for approval to ship goods to South Korea on a case-by-case basis. The ministry added that it hopes to maintain a future-oriented relationship with Tokyo and is fully ready to talk. The government refuted Japan's claims one by one. It said South Korea has always properly managed its own controls on exports to North Korea based on a catch-all system involving relevant government institutions and experts, a system it said is stricter than Japan's. Furthermore, Japan's argument is false, it said, because it fails to understand South Korea's tight system of control over strategic and non-strategic goods. It went on to say that Seoul has kept its dialogue channels with Tokyo open. Japan had cited a lack of communication as another reason for the curbs, but last year, the 7th high-level talks between Seoul and Tokyo were postponed with the agreement of both sides because Japan also understood it was not easy for them to adjust the schedule. The Trade Ministry also said Japan's latest moves go against the WTO's principles of free trade and are short-sighted because they will hurt Japanese companies and the global supply chain. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Now, shifting gears, a second world record has been smashed at the Gwangju 2019 World Aquatics Championships taking place in South Korea. Kristof Milak of Hungary set the world's best time in the men's 200-meter butterfly event on Wednesday, capturing his first title in the process. The 19-year-old's time was 1 minute 50.73 seconds, becoming the first swimmer to break 1 minute 51 seconds in the event. The previous world record was held for a decade by the legend known as Michael Phelps. The United Kingdom has a new Prime Minister. Boris Johnson delivered his first speech as PM on Wednesday, and he's already formed his cabinet. It was quite the shake-up. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Hongyu. So what did Johnson have to say on his first day as the leader of Great Britain? And what can you tell us about this cabinet reshuffle?
Well, Mark, like you said, Boris Johnson delivered a defiant, upbeat first speech as British Prime Minister outside the famous Black Door of 10 Downing Street. Johnson blamed pessimists and critics of Brexit for failing to lead Britain out of the EU for the past 3 years. He also emphasized that he will ensure Britain leaves the EU on October 31st.
I have every confidence that in 99 days' time we will have cracked it. But you know what? We aren't going to wait 99 days because the British people have had enough of waiting. The time has come to act, to take decisions, to give strong leadership and to change this country for the better.
He also listed his domestic plans such as social care for the elderly, improving infrastructure, and recruiting 20,000 additional police officers. In the following hours, Johnson swept out 17 of the former Prime Minister Theresa May's senior ministers, including Jeremy Hunt, his rival for the top job. Johnson installed leading Brexiteers in key cabinet roles, such as Dominic Raab as Foreign Secretary and Priti Patel as Home Secretary. Former Special Counsel Robert Mueller has refuted President Trump's claims of total exoneration in the federal probe into Russia's interference in the 2016 election. Testifying to Congress on Wednesday, Mueller said it was not what his reports said, and when asked to explain his findings in plain terms, he said the findings indicate the president was not exculpated for the acts that he allegedly committed. Mueller also claimed Russian election interference is one of the greatest challenges to democracy that he has encountered. During the 2 hearings that lasted 7 hours, Democrats said Trump tried to impede the investigation, while Republicans attacked Mueller's credibility. Most of Western Europe is baking under the intense heat wave, with Belgium recording its highest ever temperature on Wednesday. The mercury reached 39.9 degrees Celsius in the town of Cluny-Brogel. It's the highest temperature since 1833, when Belgium's weather agency started keeping records. Belgium issued its first ever code red warning for the entire country due to the heat. The warning will remain in effect through Friday.
Time now for our Life and Info segment, where we focus on information we do hope will be useful for your everyday life. Today we're going to talk about some summer festivals happening this very weekend here in South Korea. I'm glad to say Kan Hyung-woo has joined me in the studio to tell us more. Good morning, Hyung-woo.
Good morning.
Event number one then, what do you have for us?
Well, I have the Hwacheon Jokbae Festival. Now, Jokbae means raft in Korean. So this, it's a summer festival where you can see uniquely shaped boats floating on the Hwacheongang River in Gangwon-do Province. This festival will start this Saturday and runs through August 4th. Well, so with the festival taking place along the river, there are numerous hands-on activities, including water biking, kayaking, and canoeing. So as the name of the festival, Jokbae, suggests, the highlight is the Create Your Own Raft contest next Saturday. Anyone can follow the instructions and submit their rafts through the official website, but the deadline is tomorrow, Friday, at 6 p.m. The prize for the winner is $1,700 US.
$1,700 US. That's an extremely nice incentive to do a very good job building your raft, and that would easily cover your weekend activities as well. You could live a life of luxury for a weekend. So we have the Raft Festival. That looks very nice. It's in Gangwon-do Province, a lovely part of the country. But if that's not something you're necessarily into, give us details about the second event you're going to introduce us to.
So the second one is the Ponghwa Euneo Festival. Euneo means sweet fish in Korean. It's taking place in Gyeongsangbuk-do Province to celebrate the local product of high-quality sweet fish. This festival also starts on this Saturday and runs through August 4th. just like the Hwacheon Chokbae Festival, so you could go to both of them if you wanted to.
Okay.
So the sweet fish caught along the Naesongcheon stream in Bonghagun was given to the king as a local tribute during the Joseon dynasty. The festival provides numerous programs for visitors, including, of course, scoop net fishing and bare hand fishing. So charcoal grills are set up for visitors to cook the sweet fish they actually catch. For those of you who are interested, there is a scoop net fishing contest on August 3rd. It's the person who catches the most sweet fish in 20 minutes who will be rewarded about $850 US.
Wow. Hyungwoo, I think we're in the wrong line of work here. We should be attending these festivals and winning large sums of money. But I think out of the first two you introduced, I like the sound of the fishing one better, because nothing really beats the taste of fish you caught yourself and then eat straight away. I hear you have three festivals this weekend that you're going to introduce, so go ahead and tell us about the third one.
So the last one is for those who live in Seoul and don't feel like going the relatively long distances to get to the two festivals I just mentioned earlier. I have a perfect alternative for you. It's the Gwangjin-gyo Bridge Water Gun Festival in Seoul. So as the name suggests, it's a water gun festival that will take place on a bridge above the Hangang River. The festival is this Sunday from 2 to 7 p.m. Participants can bring their own water guns, but if you don't have one, don't worry, you can rent one when you get there. There are also magic shows and music performances ready to entertain visitors. Now, this would be a good chance to show off your big water cannons if you missed out on the more known Sinchon Water Gun Festival earlier this month.
Yeah, well, I didn't miss out on that because I actually went with my family, and it's not the first time I've been to the Sinchon one, but that one also looks like it will be a lot of fun as well for all the family. Hyungwoo, as always, it's a pleasure to have you here to talk to us about cultural events, and we can't wait to see you again next time. Thank you.
Thank you always.
Now, staying with today's topic, Thursday is kind of like our cultural day here. We are going to take a quick look at some other summer festivals. There are plenty taking place across South Korea.
Good morning. Brace for stormy conditions over the next few days. Right now, though, monsoon rain is falling in central parts of the country and will spread nationwide shortly. And do expect heavy showers through Sunday morning. Downpours of 400 millimeters or even more are in store for the Chungcheongdo provinces and surrounding regions. So if you plan to spend your summer vacation in those regions over the next few days, be extra careful. Heavy rain alerts are in place for Chungcheongdo, while a heat wave advisory still remains in place for Gyeongsangdo provinces and its surrounding regions, as well as Gangwon-do province. Daily highs will be similar to a couple notches lower than yesterday, upper 20s for here in the capital and over in Daejeon, while Daegu and Gyeongju will have a scorcher. Showers will bring a slight relief from the heat, but after the last round of monsoon rain ends, the heat will intensify. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all the news and weather we have for now. Stay tuned to Arirang TV, and a reminder that we'll have our next newscast that's coming up at noon Korea time in around an hour and a half. So until then, goodbye.